Hello students, welcome to today's class. Welcome to Gyanbihar School of Education, Suresh Gyanbihar University. And today's my topic is types of lesson plan and approaches in the subject pedagogy of a school subject English. So let's study what's all about it and understand it in a more elaborative way. And students, so today's my learning objectives will be to make you enable and to understand about the importance and types of different lesson plans and approaches in English teaching. I hope you will also be able to comprehend the basic types of different lesson plans and approaches in English language and in English teaching to enable you all to grasp the advantages and criticism of types of different lesson plans and approaches in English teaching, which is very essential for you all to understand. And I would be really happy, students, if you for just show me all these outcomes in your learning behavior, and if you learn all the types of lesson planning and different approaches which are applied in framing the lesson planning very well, and you will prepare the lesson plannings as well very efficiently in all the four devices of English language, which are prose, poetry, grammar, and compositions. So let's understand how we are preparing the lesson plans and how it is working. Because when we are talking about a foreign language in Indian classrooms, then it is must for us to understand that how it is to be taught and in what way. All right. So it is very important to know about the mental status of the students and all the four skills that we actually emphasize upon them: LSRW skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So these are some skills which are actually enabling you all to do something very important in English language when you are teaching them. Okay, so let's understand very minutely. So first of all, let's see the criteria for classification of lesson plans. How we do classify the different types of lesson plans. So first of all, we are considering the factor that is time duration. We are preparing any lesson plan on the basis of daily, monthly, weekly, or annually. So these are the types of some lesson plans which are actually required from a side of teacher to be more systematic in his or her teaching. Then we are talking about approach, and then approach is different. All the lesson plans are not working on the same approach. In my previous lectures, I have told you what is approach, method, and technique. I have you will see my detailed video on this lecture. So approach we are following is Herbartian approach, Bloom's approach, Globarian approach, RCEM, etc. There are many approaches, but basically we are going to understand them. Then third criteria that is very much in consideration, that is domain. So which is affecting most part. So there are three domains basically: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So lesson plans criteria would be following one of the criteria, that which of this domain is mostly found in that lesson plan. So on the basis of these criteria, first of all, time duration, secondly, approach, and then domain, what type of domain we are going to follow. So in that way, the lesson plans are classified. Now, let's understand about the approaches to lesson plan. So there are basically five approaches we follow in English teaching. So first of all, Herbartian approach, and then secondly, Bloom's approach, then Globarian approach, then fourth is RCEM approach, and then fifth is skill approach. Students, just understand that these are the approaches which are very importantly used in English teaching. And as an English student or as an English teacher, we cannot avoid these approaches, and we cannot teach our students without the knowledge of these approaches, because somehow our teaching practice actually goes around of these approaches, and only then we will be able to teach our students. All right, so let's understand one by one. Now, first of all, we are going to see about Herbartian approach. Herbartian approach is named after the famous scholar John Friedrich Herbert, and he was born in 1776 and died in 1841. He was a German philosopher student who identified teaching units or activities in 5 steps. So, what are those 5 steps? Let's have a look upon them. So, these are the 5 steps which I was talking about. So, these are the Herbartian approach 5 steps, and first is preparation, second is presentation, and third, association or comparison, fourth, generalization, fifth, application, and sixth is also here systematization or recapitulation, that is later on added. So when we are talking about presentation, we are talking about presentation of the lesson plan or content, whatever we are teaching in the classroom. Either we are teaching prose, poetry, or grammar composition. So preparation part is must. And we prepare any content, any lesson plan in the way that its nature is required to do. So then comes the presentation part. So it is for sure that if the presentation part is strong, which is called the process part of any teaching, then definitely the students would be understanding more and more. And the Herbartian second step is very important to understand. Then third is association or comparison. Now, whatever the knowledge is learned, according to Herbartian approach, the association is established between the previous learned contents and the few recently taught contents. So comparison is made. There is a fine difference. So the students are understanding more. Then generalization is made, specifically when you are actually teaching some content to your students and you are making just generalization of it, because that is the same rule applicable to many of the other structures. So then comes fifth part, whatever the knowledge is learned, application of the knowledge is must. So this is how the system is working in Herbartian based lesson plan approach. Then systematization and recapitalization is another important part, another important step of Herbartian approach. Now, let's understand, students, that we have to understand some outline. We have to understand this thing, that there is an outline of Herbartian approach, and in this we are talking about some general objectives, specific objectives, introduction, teaching aids, and previous knowledge. So Herbartian approach is talking about objectives in two terms. First is general, that is related to that particular content what you are going to teach, and then specific objective of that particular content that you are going to teach. Then introduction is definitely you are doing to relate your present content with the previous taught content. And then teaching aids are very important. In teaching aids, the audio visual aids or video aids or only audio aids, it is up to you and up to the content which you have chosen. So teaching aids are very important. So previous knowledge is very important to connect with the present knowledge and then future knowledge. Because if there is no assimilation, no association of the previous knowledge to the present one, then the learned part will not be actually systematized. What we are mainly talking about in Herbartian approach. So Herbartian approach is talking about how the lesson plan goes in a systematic way in 5 to 6 steps. Then statement of aim comes here, where we are talking about the teaching of the lesson plan in a particular situation. And we announce it to our students after the introduction part. Dear students, today we are going to study about this chapter, prose, poetry, or grammatical chapter, or any composition. maybe letter writing, notice writing, essay writing, story writing, application writing, report writing, any of the thing. So statement of aim actually makes it clear what you are going to teach on that particular day. All right. Then comes the presentation part, and this is the main part where the teachers and learners activity happens in the classroom. So when a teacher and learner interact in the classroom, this is actually a very important time where the teacher is presenting her content or his or her content in a best possible method or best possible approach, because the main purpose is to enable the students to understand that particular concept in a very finer way. So presentation part is actually involving all the steps which are actually detail given in a particular format of a lesson plan. For example, students, if we are talking about prose lesson plan, so definitely in presentation part, the teacher firstly going to do the model reading, and then second steps involve it is involved about imitative reading, and then we are also seeking the mispronounced words, and detailed exposition is there, comprehension questions are there, thought provoking questions are there, silent reading is also there. So these are all the steps involved in the presentation part. And now let's see the eighth part. Herbartian approach says that we include explanation also. So explanation of the something is also called sometimes generalization or the statement, teacher statement. So explanation is very important in Herbartian lesson plan approach, and it gives a clear idea to the students about the content being taught. All right. So the next, blackboard summary is very important when we are planning a lesson plan before the teaching. So blackboard summary is must, and we must take care that only the important points are written on the blackboard, and it is written with more accuracy. There should not be any spelling mistake, and there should be it is supposed to, from a teacher, that handwriting must be legible and it should be readable. Then review questions. Whatever the questions, whatever the content you have given, you are reviewing them in the form of evaluation. An evaluation can be of two types, like oral or written. After teaching your content, you are asking few questions to your students that can be your review questions. And these questions may be asked in the form of oral expressions or maybe in the written expressions. So this is how the Herbartian lesson plan works in a very systematic and step-by-step process. Then at last, home assignment is given definitely. Why the home assignment is given? Just understand the logic behind it, that whatever you have taught, students are going to revise that at their home. So they are not losing grip over the content. So that's why a small question or a just very practical question is given in home assignment. And the next day, the teacher is supposed to check those questions. Now, let's understand about Bloom's approach. So students, we are talking about Bloom's approach. And we have already studied about Bloom's, that Bloom considered education as a tripolar process. And how it is tripolar process, he explained it in 1961, that that it is an education which considers tripolar process. First of all, let me remind you about Bloom, that Benjamin Bloom, he was the person who gave that domains of learning, three important domains of learning, which are respectively cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain, which we have learned earlier also. So now we are going to see how the Bloom is formulating. He is talking about formulating educational objectives. So educational objectives are actually framed according to those domain, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. And these are the educational objectives. Then creating learning experiences, how you are going to create the learning experiences in the classroom on the basis of those objectives which I have just told you. And evaluating change of behavior. So change of behavior is expected by a teacher. As I have told you in the beginning of the class that I expect some changes, some outcome among you. So this is how the Bloom's taxonomy is working differently on different teachers or different like students also. So according to Bloom, education should be objective centered rather than content centered. So Bloom is of this point of view that whenever we are teaching to our students, first of all, we must have to be very clear in our thoughts that what we are going to achieve after teaching it. And our thoughts should be actually just make us a boundary of cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domain. And out of them, what you are going to develop and what expected behavioral changes you are expecting. So this is actually according to Bloom that education must be objective centered rather than content centered. And moreover, this approach has following features, students, which you must remember that education is a purposeful process. It is not like useless process, but whenever you are teaching and you are learning. So teaching learning process is a purposeful process and all the educational activities are objective centered. Either we plan a little activity, suppose for recitation of a poem by the student. So even this is very useful. Includes the total behavioral change of the students. So this is how Bloom's taxonomy is working, and it is really wonderful in that way that it is focusing more and more on behavioral changes of the students. That after teaching, the teacher is not empty-handed and not the student is empty-handed, because the teacher is actually fulfilling his or her teaching and the students have learned something and they have gained something in their experiences. So this is about Bloom's approach, and it also evaluates the objectives, methods, instructional aids, and providing learning experiences. So it covers the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor learning outcomes. As I have told you earlier also that cognitive domain relates to the intelligence head. I always talk about 3H formula: head, heart, and hand. So when I'm talking about head, so it is covering cognitive part, which is actually more and more concerned with logical thinking, classification, comparison, or how you see the content. Then if I'm talking about affective part, it is related to second H, that is heart. So how do you feel about the content? Why you feel its importance? Your connectivity about its positivity and negativity, or maybe in a critical way. And then psychomotor learning. Psychomotor is again related to third H, that is hand. So whatever you are doing in action is related to psychomotor learning outcome. So when you teach any content to your student, you must remember these three domains: cognitive, affective, and psychomotor, in a very mandatory manner in your mind as a teacher, that students must learn something and you must expect some behavioral changes among your students. Now, next, students, we are going to see about Globarian approach. We have seen about Herbartian approach and Bloom's approach. Now we are going to see Globarian approach in the continuation. So now, students, Globarian approach involves the following components like questioning, discussion, investigation, pupil activity, expression. So these are some points that are set in Globarian approach. So first of all, we are talking about questioning. As we all know that questioning is must and very important factor in the classroom. If the teacher is not asking questions, then how can the content will be developed? And if the students are not answering, how can the teacher be sure that my students have learned something to some extent? So questioning is must according to Globarian approach. And this is only the questioning which takes your content ahead, which actually makes your content to fulfill with completeness. So questioning is must. And then second part comes to the discussion. When there is a good discussion in the classroom, it is supposed to, by the Globarian approach, that the content is learned in a more good way. So discussion is must part in Globarian approach. And then investigation, which is related to the evaluation also. So how the students are responding now. So teacher has to investigate it. And this investigation purpose should not be like that students are feeling bored or students are feeling mandatory to do. They must do it in a very relaxing way, and they must discuss something, they must answer some questions, and the investigation must be completed by the teacher. Then fourth, pupil activity or expression. Pupil activity is continuously seen in Globarian approach as well as in other approaches, because this is how we are planning our lesson plans. And expressions are must, either it is in oral form or written form. So when we are talking about developing LSRW skills, so expression is must in giving expression to those skills and those expressions like written and oral approach. So these are the four points in Globarian approach: questioning, discussion, investigation, pupil activity, expression. Now students, this is RCEM approach, that is fourth type of approach, RCEM approach. And let me clear you that this is also called NCERT based approach lesson plan. And this approach was developed by the Regional College of Education, Mysore, Karnataka, India. That's why it is called RCEM. R stands for regional, C stands for college, E stands for education, and M stands for Mysore. So this was developed by them, Karnataka, India, and this is now famous all over India and in other part of global point of view also. So RCM approach consists of three aspects as it is seen to you. So three main aspects, that is input, process, and outcome. So this is how the lesson planning is done according to RCEM approach. So input, process, and outcome, this process is being followed in any lesson plan. Now let's talk about RCEM input. So input refers to the objectives of the lesson plan. Now, how you are going to plan your content? Basically, what are your determination for the behavioral objectives? This is focusing mainly on that. And they are known as expected behavioral outcomes, that is in short is called EBO in RCEM. So EBO is very important, expected behavioral outcome, because when you are teaching any content and in English teaching, if you are teaching something that is supposed from a teacher to inculcate a good language value among the students. So EBO is must in that. So they are just classified into following categories. So how EBO is working, just see students, it is working in four ways, like knowledge, understanding, application, and activity. So when we are talking about knowledge, we are talking about recall and recognition of the content that you may do in the form of your introductory questions also, when the students are recalling the previous knowledge. And then understanding, when you are teaching something and your students are understanding, and understanding in the way of differentiation, in the way of classification or comparison, or in any listing of some good traits or virtues. So this is how they understand the concept. Then next is application. Whatever is learned by the students, it is expected in EBO that they will apply their knowledge in practical form also. So this is how they are applying their knowledge. And for example, if you have taught one format of application writing for the sickness for sick leave, now it is not like that all the time you are going to give the question of sick leave only when it is supposed to write an application. Maybe you are going to give another application of going to a marriage theme also. So but once you have given the format, the students are going to apply their knowledge in that form, and they will be applying their knowledge of writing the application with correct format. So this is the EBO from the side of teacher that she or he is expecting. Then activity. Activity is something which is actually inducing a good action values among the students. If we are talking about English language, and if we are giving opportunities to our students to speak on a particular given topic, or maybe we are arranging a debate competition or poem recitation competition or any literary activity which is related to English teaching. So this is actually targeting the behavioral changes among the students, because it will not only enhance their LSRW skills, but it will also enhance the command over their content also. So that's how EBO is working: knowledge, understanding, application, and activity. Now, see students, the second part, I have told you just about the first part, that was input. Input was related to EBO. Now, this is second part, process. So, process is something when we are in the continuation of doing something. We are not stopping now. So, the process refers to the teaching strategies of students. They are communication strategies. Now, this is how you are dealing in the classroom with your students, with your teaching aids, with your situations in the classroom, with your techniques, and how you motivate them, how you interact with them. This is all in process part. And RCEM approach is very much focusing on this part also, that it is actually the main part where your all planning is reflected. What you have planned, communication strategy. How do you communicate to your students? How do you well establish that? So when you are interacting more and more with your students, you are enabling them to be more interested in English language, which is really necessary. If you are not able to develop interest among your students for a foreign language or an English teaching, then believe me students, your students are not going to show that EBO, expected behavioral outcomes. So communication strategy is must. Then RCEM approach is talking about another strategy that is related to instructional aids. How you are using the teaching aids, how you are using the books, the facilities, how you are using while teaching English language. So it is all dependent on this process also. The learning situation, how you create the situation in the classroom that the students are learning more, whatever the topic you are teaching in your classroom. Then technique of motivation is very, very important from the side of teacher, because without motivating your students, you cannot achieve that target. Or we can say achieve those educational objectives which you have set in the beginning of the lesson planning or in the just output or input process. All right, students. So motivating students for English language is as well very much important. Now, RCEM outcome refers to the real learning outcome. It is not like a theoretical way learning. It is actually reflecting the learning from the students, that whatever they have learned now, they are showing it in their behavior. So this includes general and specific objectives also. In general, we are actually inculcating the values of LSRW skills, and we suppose that our students are learning that, because we are teaching a foreign language. And in specific objectives, when we are connecting it to prose, poetry, grammar, or composition, we have certain objectives, specific objectives of them. So they are understanding those also. So this is how the outcome is actually assessed. Now RCEM format lesson plan, just have a look on that, how it is made. So first of all, we are going to write name of the teacher, subject, then topic, then unit. And in this way, it is systematized. Then class, group, batch, what is that? Then size of the class we mention here, date and time when we are going to teach, venue, where, previous knowledge, we are going to check that, method of teaching, what you have applied, and the audio visual aids. And then we are going to add general objectives, 1, 2 in points. And then we are going to add specific objectives also, students, 1, 2, 3 points. Now see, this is the RCM format, how we are going to prepare the lesson plan through this. So there are almost 5 columns, and in that first column, we have written about instructional objectives. And instructional objectives are divided again into general and specific objectives. See, again, I'm reminding you students that general objectives are related to LSRW skills, but specific objectives are related to that particular content of the day that you are teaching to your students. All right. Then second column is related to contents. You are writing here introduction, aim or introduction is related to your introductory questions. Then aims, what you have decided for today's class. Then presentation, what are the steps you are going to follow. Then explanation, then summary, assignment. Then teaching activity, explanation, clarification. Then learning activity, listening, notes taking. So this is how teaching activity, if you are teaching, your students are learning. If you are writing on blackboard, they are taking notes in their copies, in their notebooks. So this is how simultaneously goes on with the teacher's activity. And then lastly comes here evaluation part. So recapitalization of the knowledge what you have taught to your students is must to evaluate. And again, it is done in 2 ways, oral or written form. At the end of the class, if it is required, then mostly teachers ask some review questions and evaluation is done. And if it is in the form of class test or weekly test, then it may be done in the form of written questions also. All right, students. Now, we have seen about the approaches of lesson plan. Now, types of lesson plan in Herbartian and Herbartian lesson plan, skill lesson plan, and appreciation lesson plan. These are the lesson plans we are going to discuss now. The Herbartian approach is involving the following steps, which I have told you, and lesson plans will be accordingly. Preparation, presentation, association or comparison, generalization, application, systematization or recapitalization. Now comes here skill lesson plan. So skill lesson plan, as its name suggests, it is actually about developing some skills. And it is more focusing on enhancing the skill among your students. So learning objectives would be accordingly. So it involves 2 types of skills mainly. First is mechanical, second is manipulation. So this is how it is done. So skill lesson plan contents include methods of teaching, how you are going to teach, and then it involves demonstration. First of all, if you want to develop any skill among your students, then you have to demonstrate. And when we are talking especially about English teaching, if I'm talking about 4 skills which are mainly known as skills in English language teaching: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So if I'm supposed to give a good listening demonstration, or I want a good skill, listening skill among my students, I have to give demonstration of that good listening skill. How you listen and how you respond, in what way. So it is being demonstrated by the teacher. Then verbal instructions are given to the students to enhance those skills. Now, another type of lesson plan is related to appreciation lesson plan and how it is done. Let's see. Appreciation lesson plan aims at developing aesthetic sense by the following steps, students. So what are those? Preparation, presentation, contemplation, application. So this is how it is made. So you are preparing something according to the educational objectives. You are preparing a presentation. Now you are thinking over that plus and minus point, what is left and what has to be done. Contemplation is must over the taught content, and then application by the students is must. So this is how appreciation lesson is made, but not in very much use, but you must know about its type also. So type based on the content. Now the lesson plan could be of the following types based on the content, like the content may be detailed or elaborate lesson plan. Sometimes prose lesson plans are very detailed lesson plans, or grammar lesson plans are also very detailed, elaborative lesson plans. We have lots of examples, practices, drill, generalization in that. And in the same way, in prose and poetry lesson plans, where we are going to recite and just make the pronunciation drill also. So it first of all, it is based on detailed or elaborative manner. Then secondly, semi-detailed lesson plan, where we do not have to do so much and the lesson plan is done in according to the format only. So it is how it is done. Suppose you are teaching your students a story writing. So just step 1, step 2, step 3, and then moral or conclusion you are going to involve. And it is semi-detailed type of lesson plan that you are going to teach your students. Then thirdly, skeletal or outline or brief lesson plan. So brief lesson plan, we can call that micro teaching lesson plans, or just you are teaching small lesson plans in the very short duration in your classroom, which is actually enhancing your own teaching skills. All right, so these were the types based on the content also. Now detailed lesson plan, let's have a look on them. The teacher makes a detailed lesson plan and puts down all the classroom activities. So this is a pen paper exercises, students just understand in that way. So the teacher visualizes in advance all the activities of the learner with an intention of tailoring the teacher learning activities. You have decided everything in that. Semi-detailed lesson plan omits learner's activity. We are not involving learner's activity here, and we are just finding the teacher's activity in that. Because learner's activity is just assumed or just left on the classroom situations. So it contains only the lesson and procedural step. This is how semi-detailed lesson plan is made. Then brief lesson plan. An expert teacher usually makes this brief lesson plan. The time saves may be devoted to other teaching learning activities. Now teacher is her in a very refined way, in just few points the teacher is deciding that what this is my teaching objective, these are my educational objectives, and this is how I'm going to achieve them. So this is very brief lesson plan, and minded students that only expert teacher usually make this type of brief lesson planning. So all of you first, I suggest you personally that all of you are suggested to prepare detailed lesson plan to get more and more experience about that. So time-based lesson plan are here also. There are some lesson plans which we plan on the daily basis. There are some lesson plans which we plan on weekly basis. And then there are some lesson plans which are prepared according to subject or just year plan. So this is how a full plan is lesson plan is prepared. Now there are some short daily lesson plans. So just have a look on them. Teachers who teach regularly on daily basis are expected to keep their lesson plans on regular basis. So every day they are preparing, and every day they are into process, and their outcome is there. Then administrators design lesson plan format for uniform design of lesson plan for each subject. Daily lesson plans, if kept ready, minimizes suffering if the teacher has to be replaced another in case of leave or absenteeism. So this is the utility of daily lesson plan. Many teachers actually resort to this type of lesson plan. It is essential that the lesson plan are kept ready even if there is no demand for them. It is before planning, pre-planning phase, so that when required, the teacher may handle the class in a systematic manner. Now it's about weekly or longer lesson plans. So let's understand about them. Teachers are trained to be ready with their subject plan on weekly basis on the whole during their training period. So this helps to master teaching skills, which ensures quality during their actual classes. Now, subject unit plan. The unit plan represents a careful planning of unified activity for the pupils. The various types of unit plan include subject units, experience units, resource units, and dynamic units. So just understand, students, that unit plan is actually consisting the whole idea what you are going to get from a particular unit. There are 4 chapters in prose and you have to teach in that semester. So the whole unit is going to give you idea what you are going to achieve as an your EBO, or expected behavioral outcomes. These are some references, students, for your purpose, and you can learn them and you can see them whenever you feel comfortable for more study purpose. Now, let's have a look on some MCQs, students, that I've set for you. So, there are some general questions we are going to discuss at this end of the class. So, first of all, we move from specific to general in inductive method, deductive method, drill method, discussion method. So, the appropriate answer is inductive method. Yes, of course, students, we move from specific to general, particular to general in inductive method, where we are giving examples first and then we are explaining and making it generalized in its form. Then we are following inductive method. It is basically used in grammar teaching. Okay, so understand it in that way. Now, second question is related to practice is made in inductive method, deductive method, drill method, or discussion method. So the correct answer is drill method. Drill is something which is enabling our students to do more and more practice on a particular content what you have taught. For example, students, if you have taught a pronoun to your students, you have taught its definition. You have taught how it is used, but you have given them one example only and you have taught them it is used in this way. But practice will make them more perfect. And for that purpose, you have to do lots of drill of the students. And how it is done? It is done with the help of various questions. Maybe it is in the form of multiple choice questions, true, false, jumbled words, fill-ups, or matching, so editing, omitting. So there is a lot of drill practice which is required in grammar section mainly. So the correct answer is C. Now let's understand the next question. In British approach of lesson planning, more emphasis is on activity, teacher, content presentation, teacher and content presentation. So the correct answer is, of course, teacher and content presentation in British approach of lesson planning. So just remember it. Then next, fourth, American approach emphasizes teacher, content presentation, learning objectives or methods. So the correct answer is learning objectives. Educational objectives are everywhere very important. Now, next question is related to which one of the type of lesson plan on the basis of objectives is not of the type of lesson plan. You have to select which is not. So, micro lesson plan, cognitive lesson plan, affective lesson plan, psychomotor lesson plan. So the correct answer is micro lesson plan, because reason is that this is the type of lesson plan which is based upon teaching skills, not teaching objectives. But the other type of lesson plans, which are cognitive, affective and psychomotor, they are based particularly on some set educational objectives. All right, students. So correct answer is A, micro lesson plan. Then sixth question is which is not true about lesson plan. So it is developing confidence. It helps in orderly delivery of contents. it is developed by students, then it saves from haphazard teaching. So the correct answer is it is developed by students. It is not developed by students, it is developed by teachers. Now, this is all about types of lesson plan and students, how the different approaches are working when we are teaching in the classroom. And I really hope that you have understood and enjoyed today's teaching. And I really hope that you will understand it in a more elaborative way. So, see you in the next class. Till then, take care and stay safe.